Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's HFoG. It's been a long time. Welcome back. Man, it's been a while since I've put something up on YouTube, but I had something I wanted to talk to you about. I have not stopped playing. I just stopped recording because I felt my Let's Play had kind of run its course, and I wanted to focus on other things. So I still play the game. I'm just not recording. By the way, let me mention up front, for those of you who want more content, I'm not recording, but my son, RU Prime, is. In fact, he's even online right now. There he is, RU Prime. Go look for RU Prime on YouTube. He has a pretty good Let's Play, and he also streams on Twitch. In fact, I bet he's streaming right now as I record this, so we're going to leave him alone. But what I wanted to show you is that right there, and that is a working in-game clock that actually counts Minecraft hours. So this clock counts basically how many, what time of day it is. In this case, it's roughly 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, there's a second clock in my world right now, and it's right there. That one also counts time of day in Minecraft. And what I wanted to do is talk to you about these clocks. I looked for a good clock, Minecraft clock tutorial or something on YouTube, and I just wasn't able to find what I was looking for, so I thought I would put this out to kind of fill that void, since I ended up having to make my own. And, well, maybe at some point I'll show you my little multiplayer world here that I've been having a grand time building off camera, but that's a thing for another day. For today, let me take you into a test world and show you how these clocks work. And here we are. We're in a test world with the inner workings of both of those clocks, plus a couple others. When I set out to solve my problem of how am I going to show the current Minecraft time in game, I realized there were a couple of problems I had to solve. First of all, it's not enough to just create a clock that counts hours, because when you leave a chunk, the chunk stops updating unless you've put in a chunk loader, and we're not going to go there. But when you leave a chunk, the chunk stops updating. And that means when you come back to the chunk, your clock will be wrong. The other problem you have to solve is, what do you do when someone sleeps? And I've solved both of those problems the same way, and that is I created a detector that will detect exactly when you sleep. So 6 a.m. So if you get out of the bed, that resets the game clock to 6 a.m. And there is a way to detect that. And that's what this is doing right here. This is how I do that. We have a daylight sensor with a comparator running out of it. As you may know, the daylight sensor will have a different signal strength through a comparator depending on how bright the light is around it. And it turns out that if you put a hopper and load 2 full stacks, or I could just as easily do non-stacking items here, put 2 non-stacking items there instead, that would have the same result. So let's demonstrate that actually. So let's get those stacks out and we'll put in wooden swords instead. Whoops. This should work exactly the same. So what'll happen is this hopper creates a signal strength in this comparator that gets subtracted from the signal strength being output by this comparator through the daylight sensor. And the result is that this redstone output right here will be exactly signal strength 1 at 6 a.m. And it turns out also at 6 p.m. So if I set the time to 0, you'll see that redstone light turns on right there because I've got a signal strength of 1 coming out of there. And in a minute that will turn off again because the light will change. There you go. Okay, so now we have a way to detect 6 a.m. and likewise 6 p.m. How convenient that they both have the same give the same signal strength. I should mention this setup really only works in clear weather. If the weather is overcast, that will change the light output. And this may fire at a different time, or it may not fire at all. In fact, I suspect it won't fire at all when it's rainy weather. It doesn't seem to. But I figured that was a good enough compromise, because whenever you sleep in a bed, not only does it reset the clock to 6 a.m., but it also clears up any rainy weather. So after you've slept in a bed, this will always detect that you've done that. So now we have a way to reset the clock. We have a way to reset the clock back to 6 a.m. And then the next thing you need to do is just have a way to count the hours. And both of these do that. They just do it in different ways. The ones on the left count the hours using items, non-stackable items in a chest, which I'll show you in a second. The ones on the right count the hours using a piston tape. So every hour they advance the piston tape one. And let me just real quick show you how that works. So here we have the chest that's counting items. These are non-stackable items. Any non-stackable item will work. Turns out that roughly every 2 non-stackable items in a chest will increase the output signal by 1. So that means that if we put another item in that chest every 30 minutes, we're counting half hours. And then the signal strength that comes out of that will be 1 higher for every hour passed when we reset it. So you see we have 4 items in here now, and whereas it would have been here at 6 a.m., now it's at 8 because there's 4 items in there. Now let's go over here and talk about how do we read that signal strength and turn it into a discrete output. So you may also know that an item frame will generate an increasing signal strength based on the setting of the item in the item frame, how much you've rotated the item frame. So when the item frame is unrotated, the item in the frame will output a signal strength of 1. So what we have here is a row of basically exclusive OR gates. The signal strength out of here is 1, which is enough to light this repeater. The signal strength here is 0, so this repeater is not lit. Therefore, this repeater has turned this torch off, and this repeater doesn't turn this torch off, so you end up with a lit torch. The next one, that has no signal strength, so the repeater is off. The one up here is also off, but because the lower repeater is off, this torch is on, which is powering this block, which turns that torch off. But if I advance the time, you'll see, or advance the signal strength, now this is on, this is off, lower repeater is on, upper repeater is off, so lower torch is off because that repeater was on. Upper torch is on because this repeater was off and that torch was off. Right? This one, the torch is off because this repeater turns that torch off, but this repeater also powers this block, which turns that torch off. Hopefully that makes sense. What you end up with is a way to tell increasing signal strength, turning a signal strength into a discrete output. It's basically a selector. So here we have selected item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I imagine most of you have seen this before. It's a super useful circuit, and that's what I've used to detect the output of the hours. So for every 2 items in this block, in this box, this signal strength will be increased. These comparators just move that signal over to here so that I can have another row, continue my row of detectors over here. And it lets me create a ring of signal all the way around here, which means these torches get turned on and off based on the hour, which is very convenient for building a torch tower and convenient wiring over to the readout out here. I didn't have to put it in a ring, but putting it in a ring just makes it much easier to change the output. So let's real quick talk about this one. This is the first one I made. It works on exactly the same principle as that one, except instead of going clockwise, it goes counterclockwise, and it uses this rather clever sand tower mechanism to get the signal up to the top. So if you look over here, that one's lit, and it's lit because this sand block is powering that repeater, allowing the power to go through the sand. Or up there, it's just changed. So this one's gone up, and now that one's lit. And you can see down here, it's just a bunch of pistons pushing sand blocks. Now, they work the same way. This is kind of a clever system, but it turns out it has a flaw. And the flaw is, as some of you may know, if a falling sand block gets pushed by a piston at the wrong time, that sand block will get dropped as an item. So what happens is, on rare occasions, unfortunately it's often enough to notice, this clock will drop... Hello. Silly llamas. This clock will drop sand blocks. And so eventually it stops working and you have to replace sand in it, which is a pain in the neck. So I don't recommend you build this one. As clever as it was, this is the one to build because it's much more reliable. So let's real quick, once again, here's our daylight detector. Right? This detects 6 a.m. This torch will get lit at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., which lights up this signal sustain, which turns that torch off, which allows this hopper to drain the items from the chest. So at 6 a.m., all those items will drain out, and that allows the clock to reset. So let's go ahead and reset our clock. Imagine I have left the area and come back at midnight. And of course, while I was away, time didn't pass in this chunk, or at least redstone didn't operate in this chunk. So my clocks are now all wrong. So to fix that, we just sleep, or we wait until morning. Either way works. We sleep. You'll see that lamp will have briefly turned on, as will this torch has turned off, which has allowed all of those things to drain, which means this is going to read 6 a.m. again. Now, so they both work exactly the same way. By the way, I should mention, the thing that is actually counting the hours is just a simple HFoG hopper clock. If you put a full stack of items in a hopper clock, then it will change state every 30 minutes, which means this redstone block will be on this side once an hour and lighting up this line, which is what is advancing the hours. That line right there is what causes items to be ejected into that hopper during this chest. So anyway, that's how I'm counting the hours. It's just a simple hopper clock. Now let's talk about the piston tapes. The advantage to that one on the left is it is super robust. It will not break. You can leave. You can come back. You can do anything you want to do. That's going to always be. You can put a llama on it. It's never going to break. The piston tape clock works in a similar manner, but it can break, and I'll talk about why. And it's also a little bit less accurate. And the reason it's less accurate is, whereas that clock there is counting half an hours, so I actually made a minor mistake. I said that there was only a stack of items in here. It's actually half a stack because it's counting every half an hour, not an hour. This clock counts once an hour, which means its accuracy can lag up to an hour behind the actual time, and actually it can be sometimes even a little more than that because of the way it resets itself. So it's not quite as accurate. It is much more compact. It's also less resource intensive, but it has issues. So let's real quick demonstrate the operation here again. This is right here. This is our daylight sensor again, just like before. If you really want to, you can locate this daylight sensor anywhere and just run the signal somewhere else, as long as you're careful enough with how you run the signal. But you can see right here, this torch will turn on at 6 a.m. That goes into an RS NOR latch right here, and that causes this piston to extend. So you'll see if I set... You'll see that piston will go up, and it will stay up until the clock resets to 6 a.m. So this is going to stay up as long as this line isn't powered. And you see now it's advancing around 6 a.m. When that block goes there, it's going to cause the piston to drop like that. And then it goes one more time, stops at 6 a.m. And that's how we reset these clocks. Okay, just keeps advancing. So let's talk about how the advance happens. Again, we have a simple HFoG hopper clock. This time it fires every hour, so this has a full stack of items in it. So every hour that will advance. It causes this a signal to be pumped into here, over through this repeater, which causes this piston to extend, which pushes that item up. Okay? Now, when this item gets pushed up, when this block gets pushed up, this smart piston detects the motion, kicks it over there. So this moves up, that kicks it over. This smart piston will detect the motion of that block and fire this down. This detects that, and so on. So you end up with getting one complete cycle of your piston tape. The reason this has kind of a different sensor from that one, this smart piston is a little different because since I'm pushing around a redstone block, that would bud this piston. And the same is true of this guy down here. We have to be careful not to bud that piston. That would cause the piston to remain extended and it would break the clock. So that's why this detector, the smart piston configuration, is a little bit different from those. I wish I could use those. By the way, you don't have to use glass here. Any block will do. I've just used glass so that I can see the lamps from behind. So anyhow, the disadvantage to both of these clocks. Well, this one has the obvious disadvantage that these are using regular pistons with sand blocks, and so therefore it is possible that on rare occasions these sand blocks will drop, and that will cause the clock to stop working. On this one, I've used sticky pistons with solid blocks, but this one still has a problem in that in rare occasions, usually if you've slept at exactly the wrong time, what can happen is this clock can put an extra pulse through it while this piston is extended. And if that happens, this block will get pushed here and this block will get pulled there. And when that happens, now the clock is broken. And you'll see that the next time it tries to advance, that happens. So it fails to actually advance the clock. And that's easy to fix. You just put a block back there and now it's fixed. But it's a bit of a pain. So just be aware that you're occasionally going to have to repair this clock if you build it in your world. It's not very frequent, but it does occasionally break. So if for some reason it's no longer keeping time, go up and check your clock. That's probably what happened. So which ones of these would I build? I would build that one if you want something very robust and if you can live with a larger clock, with a larger face. I would build this clock here if you're okay with it being a little less accurate because it's counting full hours instead of half hours and it takes a little longer to reset. And also if you're okay with the fact that you're occasionally going to have to repair this clock. All right, well, that's what I wanted to show you. I am not going to show you how to build these clocks, but I will include a world download. I figure it doesn't really need a tutorial. I've already explained how they work. You should be able to download my world and figure out how to build it yourself. Just copy what I built, and there you go. If you really want a tutorial, go ahead and ask. Maybe I'll make one. So anyway, it was nice to talk to you all again. If you watched till the end, thank you very much. Go check out my son's YouTube channel. Go check out his Twitch channel. He's doing some good stuff. And who knows, maybe you'll see me there. And who knows, maybe I'll come back and make some more videos. If this one does well and people like it, maybe that'll convince me to come back. But either way, I'm happy. I'm glad you watched this video. I'm glad I could share this with you. And I will talk to you all next time. Everybody, have fun and play some Minecraft.